Hi everyone, I am delighted to introduce our guest today. He is an architect, interior designer, an educator, the founder of Cube Edutour and SPAR, and I must add, a ubiquitous explorer. So without any further ado, let's have some tea. Hi Zain, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's very nice to be here.
So tell us about your time in New York at the Parsons School of Design.
So now you're taking me back, 1989.
Okay.
Remember, I had just arrived from a British boarding school, all boys boarding school. And I arrived in the summer of 89 August to sign up at Parsons, who had kindly given me a scholarship. I hadn't been in New York City ever before and I was scared. My first semester at Parsons was frightening.
Okay.
All this freedom, you come from an environment where you're doing some very heavy duty, old school education, and then you arrive at Parsons, which is this other opposite, open-ended, left-wing art school, and they're like, what's your opinion? I wasn't used to sharing my opinion.
Okay.
It was the most incredible time, absolutely incredible. I would recommend Parsons. I'm not sure what it's like now, but back in those days, I definitely wanted to do it again when I graduated, because they took my very erudite, fundamental, strong British boarding school education and gave it wings. Freedom of thought, support, nurturing, imagination. They fed fuel to my curiosity. It was a phenomenal 4 years, phenomenal.
Sounds amazing.
It was.
Zain, tell us about your tattoos and what made you get them and why you chose these designs. And you knew I was going to ask about this because they're really cool.
Everybody, thank you so much. Everybody asks about my tattoos. And the tattoos each one of them has taken years of thinking about it before they've happened. So they've never been sort of a spur of the moment or not quite in my stable mind kind of decision. The Urdu one, which is the one that everyone gets drawn to immediately, is Iqbal, Hazaron Saal Nargis Apni Benuri Pe Roti Hai. And it's a couplet I've studied since I was a late teen. So I've read all of Iqbal's books, and Tulu Islam I was naturally drawn to, which is the book that this has come from.
Okay.
And each tattoo has its own sort of philosophy behind it. So I have a tattoo that says Ishq, I have a seahorse, I have a tattoo that was dedicated to a friend of mine who passed away a couple of years ago, and we were very close. So they all have sort of conceptual, symbolic meaning. They're not just decorative elements. They embody beliefs that I like to keep myself reminded by. So they're close to me, literally, not only close to my heart as an idea, but they're embedded in my skin. They will go with me to my grave. So they've been thought through very carefully, and in one way or the other, they're all connected to how I operate my life's decisions.
So Zain, I know you play the cello. Where did you learn, and what is your favorite musical piece to play?
So unfortunately, I don't play the cello that well to have a piece that I can play on it. But the cello has been my route to meditation and route to finding that secret little small space within myself that I don't have to share with anyone. The cello, as you know, it sits between your thighs and you lean it up against your heart. So it's a very physical thing. It's not on the distance. It's not the end of your fingertips.
Yeah.
It's not just, it connects to your entire body and you feel its reverberations going through your blood as you play it. I discovered the cello when I was in New Mexico.
Okay.
So I was in the desert. I'd fled New York because I was tired of just this mega urbanity. I'd witnessed 9/11 and I thought there has to be more to living here than just my fancy 212 area code and 10001 zip code. I lived in downtown Manhattan, very much had that Manhattan, I'm a New Yorker kind of life. And I thought, post 9/11, there's got to be more to this. So when I moved to New Mexico, I met this wonderful woman who was a mandolin player. And she was also a singer. She used to be one of the ex-Dixie Chicks. We became great friends.
Really?
She used to play live at the bar, and I'd go listen to her. The mandolin fascinated me. So we became friends, and I said, listen, I have a dream of being able to play the cello, because we weren't allowed to when I was in boarding school. I had to play the piano because the string instruments were taken. She said, let's go buy you a cello. So we just went, and we bought me a cello. I didn't know what to do with it. She found me a tutor, and I started playing cello on the roof, out in the open in the desert, just by the highway. And it became the most incredible other world.
That's a great story, man. New Mexico, the desert, a cello,
Yeah.
and a Dixie Chick.
And a Dixie Chick, she's an incredible human.
There are many photos of your very soulful-eyed dog on your Insta feed. So I've always wondered, like, what kind of breed is he, and where did you find him?
So he is the most beautiful soul I think I've ever known, and that those soulful eyes really give away his innocence and his purity. He's a rescue. He's a local greyhound, so we call them Tazis. They're known mostly for their racing and hunting prowess. That's what they're used for. These long, skinny, tall creatures. And I had not actually gone to pick him up. I had spoken to this lady who was a dog show judge and said, I'm looking for XYZ. I was looking for a Tazi or a Saluki, or a dog that had already done its work at 4 years of age and would bring him or her in as an adult. And she said, come and see this dog. It's not what you're looking for. I always wanted to rescue, but there is a dog who we've rescued from interior Sindh. He's in really bad shape. He's being kept at a beach hut in Sandspit, and it just sounded awful. I said, let me look at him. I'll find him a home. So I went to see him, and literally about 200 yards from the gate, he was tied at the back, big red collar, bag of bones. I could just see the single line when I looked at him, and he was named thus. So we made eye contact. She said, be careful. He's not used to strangers. He may bark at you. He's a big boy. So all of these disclaimers. Not a bark. Tail started wagging. I walked right up to him, and I knew he was coming home with me that day. There was no two ways around it.
Yeah.
He had about 100 ticks on him. He had to be cleaned. I could see his entire structure. So he was called Giacometti. He was named Giacometti after the sculptor whose work all looks like that. He came home, and I had no history on him. I didn't know how old he was. His ears had been badly clipped. He slept for 2 days in my garden because he was just so relieved to be in a safe environment. And that's the end of it.
So, and you mentioned now that he was a rescue dog. So I know that you started SPAR, which is the Society for the Protection of Animal Rights.
Yep.
So what made you start it, and what projects is it currently involved in?
SPAR was also started completely by default. I had seen a friend of mine walking her dog. Just random Instagram story, here's my dog and here's another dog he just met. But the other dog was behind a grill and it looked like a husky puppy. And I just thought, outdoors, it's looking at May or June, what's going on? So I made a note of that very gently in the back of my mind, and I let it go. Next day I spoke to her, I said, listen, what's the story with the husky that's outside? Because now I figured out that it's on the road and doesn't look like he's in a very warm, cushy, loving environment. So she said, next door neighbors, they keep the husky outside. And, so I got this horror story. So I was on my way out. It was Eid holidays. I was on my way out for just a weekend to Sri Lanka. And I just drove past this when I came back just to see what the story was. 7 in the morning, and it was a triple coat husky puppy, just a few months old, on a cement block, behind cars, between the boundary wall and cars parked outside.
I think you put up pictures of this. I remember this.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it went viral. It went viral to the extent that I found out who the owner was. Atika Oder was an absolutely incredible human being because she called me. I didn't know this woman from Adam. And said, I've gotten through the man. He's ready to speak to you. Go and take care of this dog. From 7 in the morning till 2 o'clock at lunch, all of this had happened. Everybody knew that this dog needed help. And so the dog needed help, spoke to the man. Fahim Zaman was hugely helpful. Marvi Mazhar, hugely helpful. Went with me to meet him. Saturday night, he passed away in my hands. The owner was out someplace else at some wedding. And the next morning, I thought, this has a message in it. I see so many animals. I've rescued some. I've worked with Aisha with the ACF in the beginning. There's so many animals, but how did this 3 days in my life have me completely immersed in saving this one particular dog's life? There must be more to it than just that dog.
Yeah.
So what I realized, what the delay was, that I wasn't able to touch that dog and take him to a vet or rescue him without the owner's permission, because that would be vandalism. Dogs are owned by XYZ. That's the owner. So it's just like vandalizing or stealing somebody's car or their home. So the next morning, that's what made me start SPAR. I said, this law has to change. We need to work at structural change about how we look at animals, the role and relationship between us, and that they should stop being subservient to our needs and our requirements, and that I need to be able to have the right to take that dog, save its life first, and then discuss the issues with the man, because he kept saying, I still love the animal. I said, you may love him, but look at the condition. He's 104 temperature. His liver has failed. He's got tick fever.
People keep huskies and these long-haired dogs in this climate. It's just
wrong.
not suited. Yeah.
This animal was alone. no human contact, on a cement floor, outside, in the heat, no water in his bowl, food that had bugs in it, fur that was matted. So whichever way we spun it, he was suffering. And I didn't have law in my hands to save his life.
But
legally.
You worked on getting legislation passed,
that's
right?
So next year legislation was passed. This year we've redone the whole law from scratch. And that's what SPAR does. We look at legislation, we look at education, we look at advocacy, awareness raising. So a million things, even with the dog culling that's been happening. We go into the communities and talk to them about why you need to understand dog behavior. So SPAR came out from the loss of that one dog's life. And I'd like to believe that we've saved many more since because of the work that he's inspired me to do.
Yeah, that's amazing. So now Zain, based on your experience as a man growing up and living in this patriarchal, toxic culture, so to speak, what simple advice would you give parents about their sons?
Well, that's a really tough one. So a male growing up in Pakistan today, I think globally, but specifically for you in Pakistan today, is exposed to so many more things than they were when I was growing into my maleness. As a teenager in the UK, we had no television, a couple of stations, no internet. Now the information is so much more that he is questioning his own role. He is questioning his own status. He's questioning his boundaries. And I would suggest to families, to parents, that the male is more fragile, just like they assume anybody else would be. They are fragile. They have emotions. They have sensitivities. They have insecurities. And their digital world is feeding into those insecurities.
And they're not allowed to have those insecurities in this culture.
They're not allowed to express it, right? So they have the insecurities. They're not allowed to express it. And parents are not listening. I would suggest to parents today that please listen to your boys as they're growing up. Take them seriously. Don't laugh at them. Don't sideline it. Get them to mardo. You'll be fine if you don't do these things. It is important. And in the last 2-3 years, Iram, I've seen so many youngsters, teenagers, either get deep in cocaine, heroin addictions for the same reason, I believe, that for some it's a chemical imbalance that they're born with. For some it's an escape because nobody's listening to them. And it's a way to numb their desires of need, of help, of SOS. So many suicides have happened in pretty close quarters that you would never imagine. So mostly this is happening because the boys are not being listened to. They're not being seen as their own entities. And I would suggest to parents that please take your boys more seriously.
So this actually leads into my next question. You ran a course a while back called The Art of Conversation. It was for young men, and it was geared towards, those who needed a forum to be heard. Would you consider doing something like that again?
For sure. I found that young men don't have mentors. They don't have people they can feel safe with in terms of intellectual, philosophical sharing of ideas. And I know that there's been a lot of time I've spent with some of these boys when the course started, just talking to them. You'd be surprised that I'm no technical person, and yes, some of these boys will need therapists. We have fantastic therapists in Karachi. But that was really about getting the boys to talk, conversation, listening to them, holding your opinion back, and just responding to what they're saying.
That's interesting, holding your own opinion back.
Holding your own opinion back. Not projecting onto them. Not patronizing them, not talking down to them. Allowing them to feel all right in their own skin.
So Zain, the slogan, my body, my choice, it resonated with you enough that you had t-shirts printed with the slogan on it. Why do you think these words set people off? And how can we deconstruct the slogan?
So my body, my choice means a lot to me because as you see me, my tattoos, many of my tattoos are exposed. And I get exposed as well to people who will touch me, who will step out of their boundary and ask me inappropriate questions at inappropriate times. So in my own little way, I can relate to and empathize with this sense of having agency of my own body and the boundary beyond which one should not step, even though I'm male. In a male patriarchal society, I feel violated. And there's oftentimes airport checks, hotel check-ins, Agha supermarket, just grocery shopping at 9 in the morning. And it's not men who will come and touch me. I'm touched often, inappropriately, by women. And so I can empathize when it's flipped the other way around. And I think this idea of each of us having not only agency of our bodies, but also that as an idea, agency as an individual, as a thought process, And then within appropriate contexts, finding balance and harmony. So you can't apply all Western contexts and their rules and regulations to us here, the same way as I can't apply Karachi's social construct to interior Sindh, to interior Punjab, to the mountains. So I think that once one is truly in conversation with their own jism as an existence, not just the carnal jism, then they would be able to have empathy for the other and understand cultural appropriateness and understand gender appropriateness. So for me, when that slogan came out, it really hit home. I was like, wait, I know that space. PIA recently, on a flight, cabin crew, grabbed onto my arm, can we read this? I said, you're welcome to read it, but you don't have to hold me for it. And she turned around, she said, well, aap dikha rahe kyun hai? Right? So this is where the whole problem lies, right? My body, my choice, I'm allowed to show it. It's the ridiculous argument that has been used for rape cases by misogynists worldwide. Well, she was dressed for it. Well, I'm dressed in a t-shirt and jeans, my tattoos happen to show, doesn't mean you're allowed to like make physical contact with me. You're a complete stranger. What happened to the na mehram mard issue here?
Yes.
And she didn't get it. She laughed about it. My son also has them. I said, this is not a laughing matter, because if I turned the tables, I'd be lynched, mugged, potentially arrested. And as I was leaving, I told her that, this is sexual harassment because I'm uncomfortable. I'm requesting you very politely to not touch me. I'll explain my tattoos to you. You're not responding to the discomfort. You're mocking it by laughing. I said, this could be a case for sexual harassment, at which point she sort of realized the impact of it all. But this happens all the time. So those t-shirts that I've made for myself, for close friends, I think it's a really important direction we all have to pursue and deconstruct, to understand the holistic symbolism behind that, not just the carnal, my body, my choice. There's much more to that body. It's a body of being, not just your flesh and gender.
So Zain, you once told me about a book that you really enjoyed, and that book is Man Enough by Justin Baldoni.
Yes.
So what in this book spoke to you?
Oh, it's a brilliant book. He's a brilliant man. I've followed him since his TED Talk, and it's a fantastic book. I actually think that it would be great to bring into our social studies curriculum for the subcontinent, because maleness, macho-ness, masculinity, the gender roles of male versus female is all so complex and interdependent on so many different things, whether it's religion or it's a role between mother and son, the role between mother and father that impacts the son, the role between son and religious scholar coming to teach him at home, role of female teacher at home, and son versus sports coach. It's siblings. Man Enough is a great book because it really transcends this whole idea of the fact that you don't have to spend your life constantly competing with yourself against social norms of expectations from your parents, expectations from society, that you have to do this, you have to do this to be man enough. Anything less than that is you're not really worthy of it, or you're irrelevant. So relevance comes into play, and it really is fabulous because it allows room for people like me to exist.
And I can see why it would be good applied here also.
It's enormously needed. Yeah. It's enormously needed because we have to really look at what we consider maleness, masculinity, just the positive construct of it before we start looking at the misogynist that, the misogyny that it creates. So we have to get into like the germ root of the problem. And that's a great book. Also, it's a great book because it's distant. It's coming from a Western point of view. Right? So it's not close enough home to be uncomfortable reading. But you can pull out the things that, oh, I can relate to that. I can't relate to this. It's very first world. I can't relate to this. But I can relate to that. Oh, this happened in my neighbor. This happened to my cousin. So it's a great book. It's easy to read. It's very personal. So it's very much about who he is. And that's important because it doesn't feel like he's preaching. It's all coming from personal experiences. Fabulous book.
We should get that for our library then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Zain, through your Cube Edutours, you explore so many areas of Pakistan and you give the people who go on your tour such an immersive experience. So can you talk about, one, what made you start the Edutours, and two, how have they enriched your relationship with your country?
Wow, full of tough questions today, Erin. So, the Edutours have they've been this little trickle that have grown into this enormous waterfall. It started off with some very simple art history conversations when I was at Parsons. Here's Frank Lloyd Wright, here's X, here's YZ, and I'm like, well, I come from a 7,000-year-old culture. None of this really matters to me. It's modern, and we don't really have to spend so much time on it. So I used to argue with my architectural history teachers that, what about looking at something deeper that's more ancient? You know, we keep getting stuck to just this sort of modern stuff. What about where I come from? So the conversation in my head grew, the idea of identity and roots and the earth. So as I traveled the world, I ran into this question everywhere I went. Where are you from? What's your history? Why do you look this way?
Okay.
You know, why do you sound like this?
Yeah.
The music you listen to, I've been listening to Qawwalis and Madam Noor Jahan and soundtracks from Umrao Jan and Pakiza and whatnot all my life through university. And friends used to be so curious. Teachers used to be curious, what are you listening to? So having been all the way through the US, the Middle East, UK, Tokyo, and then back, I realized that there is something here that I really need to, as I grow and mature intellectually, I now have the capacity to actually delve into it slightly deeper. And I was teaching at Indus in 2011 when I realized that these students, just like myself, had been exposed to a very one-sided Western curriculum. And when I wanted to talk to them about comparison in design from subcontinental design or Indo-Arabian design versus what they'd learned that was Northern Europe or Northern American, they didn't have the knowledge for that. And I said, let's go, I'll take you. So it started off as a personal journey. I'll take you, I'll take my khala, I'll take whoever. Let's start. We started with Makli, did Ranikote, and then before I knew it, I became the expert on where to go in Sindh, and then it became Punjab, and then it became the mountains. And now suddenly I'm the person who knows about the 600 sites in KPK and the 200 sites in Sindh and everything else in between. It's a personal journey that's grown. And one has, over the years, I've realized what a desperate need we all have to understand our bioregional roots, our roots that have been born by the river Indus and the fertility that she's provided for 7,000 years. So Sumeria, Egypt, the Parthians, the Greeks, the Indo-Greeks, the Indo-Scythians, we have history that's Southern Russian relevant, we have Mongol history, we have Central Asian history. And the more I discovered this, the more I realized that there were dots we could connect. And the role that this landmass we call Pakistan today, the important history it's played in shared histories in the region, which are lost because of our linear curriculum. So that over the years has grown and become more and more exciting, triggering my imagination, my curiosity, more so every year. And the caravan, as I call it, has just grown with all sorts of people who've been traveling with me. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I see on your social media, like you guys have gone almost everywhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why I say it, from the Wakhan border, which is northwest, right next to Afghanistan, the Kalash, all the way to the other end, at Nagar Pakar, which is the Indian border.
Yeah.
So traversed right across the country.
And Umrao Jan and Pakiza are great soundtracks, by the way.
Great soundtracks.
I also listened to them in college.
Great soundtracks and really difficult to translate.
Yeah.
So over the years, I've had to explain what these songs mean. And they're complex.
Yeah.
Complex poetry.
So Zain, I have some easy rapid fire questions for you now.
Easy.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so here we go. Can you swim?
No.
Okay. Your favorite color?
Gray.
Do you have any allergies?
Yes.
That's it?
Dust and mites.
Describe a Karachi winter night in 3 words.
Organic lip balm.
Okay. Best and worst vegan dish you've had?
Oh, I love bhindi. So that would be my favorite vegan dish. Worst vegan dish would have to be something that's too spicy. Otherwise, I'm okay with vegan dishes.
Okay. How do you have such great hair?
I can't take credit for it. It's genetic.
Okay. What book are you currently reading?
It's a book I go back to often. It's a book by Edward Said, Culture and Imperialism.
Okay. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would you live?
Exactly where I am right now.
What is your go-to song?
Something from Nina Simone, probably.
Nice. Who is Miss Jade?
Miss Jade is the other beat of my heart. She is another rescue. Miss Jade is my vintage Range Rover, who is the most precious living organism in my house, other than the pets.
Okay. And finally, how many pairs of those Balochi kitties chappals do you have?
Now I probably have about 8 or 10.
Oh, nice. And you're wearing a pair today?
I'm wearing a pair right now.
Nice.
So they're handmade. This is a little store that I discovered in the heart of Liari. They're all handmade. I wear embroidered ones also, which is all hand done. Some of these are Balochi, some of these, not this pair, but others come more from the Shidi history, the African Asian history. So this is just this guy who has a shop the size of this room, maybe smaller, and he's maintaining this ancient handicraft. I love these shoes.
Are they comfortable?
They're very comfortable, and they've been sent to friends in Florida, friends in the UK, friends in Dubai.
Oh, cool.
Because people see me wearing them, and it's not like it's something new and innovative.
Yeah.
It's been around forever.
Yeah.
But somehow they show up on my flat feet, and then other people want them. So if nothing else, I get to do some small-scale distribution of ancient handicrafts.
Nice. Well, Zain, thank you so much for coming in. I really had fun talking with you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been amazing. Thank you for all the difficult questions. I hope that you got all the answers you wanted, and we'll do this again sometime.
We hope to.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot, Erin.
And guys, thanks for tuning in. See you next week. Bye.